You've become deeply involved in the work.
Yes, I've learned it.
And you've orchestrated the piano prelude, and there's a story behind this that's kind of wonderful. Or sad. I mean, almost all Julia Perry's stories have a sadness behind them.
So I in the American Music Center, I believe it was in a box with her materials, and there was a handwritten score of the Prelude for piano, and in square brackets it said, also available in an arrangement for strings. And I'm a terrible pianist. Back then I was even more of a terrible pianist and couldn't quite manage to play it well enough to make sense of it, but I did realize that it was actually a beautiful piece, and if I could find that string arrangement, I could easily get people together to do it. And I never found it, and I had the number for her sister, Lucy Bigby Perry, and called her up.
Perry Bigby, Lucy
Perry Bigby, yes. And she said, oh, I've sent them all to the Library of Congress, and Wayne Shirley.
All Julia Perry's materials. She sent to the Library
all
of
these
Congress.
boxes of Julia Perry's manuscripts and papers. And I called up Wayne Shirley and said, please tell me that you've received these. He said, Julia Perry, I've seen nothing, and if they would have arrived, I certainly would have known about it. It would have been very important for us to have that. He had no idea where they were. So over the years since, I made one arrangement just for standard string orchestra, violins 1 and 2, violas, cellos, basses.
Of the Prelude for piano.
Prelude for piano.
Right.
And it doesn't quite, I performed it once, didn't quite work because I couldn't manage the voice leadings and the orchestrations to make it sound well for a string orchestra. Then some years later I did it again, and then very recently I revised that, and the Akron Symphony, my orchestra played it in the latest version remotely last year, and then the Akron Symphony played it in the summer at Hale Farmstead. It is remarkably complicated because even though it's for piano, 2 hands, there are so many intricate voice leading things that are so clear from the notation that it took violins 1 and 2, violas 1 and 2, cellos 1 and 2, and basses to make it work.
How would you describe the Prelude for piano, musically?
I hear a deep undercurrent of blues and a lyrical quality of Gabriel Fauré. It's a strange combination. It's almost like the incidental music to Pérez et Melisande by Fauré has this aching lyrical quality. And underneath, there's this intense, in Perry's harmony and in the way she manages the ranges, even in the piano. There's this deep richness and conflict in it, and
poignant.
It's everyone who's ever heard the piece, and it's being played a lot
Right.
these days, has been struck. It just stands up
It does.
above everything else on the program.
We've loved doing your orchestration of it. You made an interesting choice, which you make as an optional choice. You give the performers the option to play a little bit of additional music that you've interpolated, that you've inserted into the piece. Just speak a little bit about that.
The opening phrase is a complete span of music that goes into a more questioning part. And then there are these call and response between upper range and lower range instruments. And then that opening phrase returns, and then it seems interrupted, and then it suddenly ends in a very unsettling way, actually.
Which is part of its purpose, isn't it, I think, yeah.
And it felt that knowing some of her orchestral works, and the fact that she liked to repeat complete phrases, and that in her chamber works she does not do that. I felt that in casting it for string orchestra, I would just repeat the complete opening phrase before the disruptive ending. Mm-hmm. Especially thinking that the players, and I knew that the orchestra would love playing that melody once more.
It's gorgeous.
To give them a chance to finish it before it ends.
Right, and a string orchestra just kind of by its nature feels more expansive.
Yes.
Otherwise the piece is open in probably just under 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And that little extra just gives it a little more sense of fullness of expression.
I didn't want to misrepresent the piece, so it's very clear in the score that I've added this, but it's also clear that these notes were written by her.
Right.
Earlier.
What you've added is Julia Perry, but you've just created a structure, and as we said, you've also provided an easy way for orchestras just to go back to the piano structure.
Exactly as it